Evening, everyone, and welcome to our special coverage of the New York primaries. I am Richard French, and yes, the polls have just closed. I want to introduce my good friends who are going to work us through the numbers as they come in. Political journalist and author Dominic Carter and Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. They've been covering these primaries with me for seemingly forever.
We got to stop winning like this.
And guys, at least on the Republican side, no suspense tonight. It has already been called, Andrew, and it has gone for Donald Trump on the Republican side.
Yeah, this wasn't unexpected. The polls had been showing Trump well over 50%. There were very few people that were suggesting that this was going to be anything other than a Trump walkover in tonight's primary. The real question for Trump, though, isn't winning the primary. It's how many delegates is he able to pick up. That's going to be the suspense, and we're going to have to wait over the course of the night. He just picked up 14 delegates for winning the state overall, but it's going to depend on how he does in each individual congressional district, and that'll determine how many delegates he picks up. He needs as many as he can, obviously, to try to avoid a ballot fight and a floor contest at Cleveland at the Republican convention.
Well, let me set the format here for the next hour, along with Andrew and Dominic. We have reporters fanned out. Two of the candidates on both sides have decided to stick around New York, that being the aforementioned Donald Trump, who we should hear from pretty shortly. We're going to be going to Trump Plaza when, in fact, Donald Trump goes to the podium, and we have reporters on scene. Hillary Clinton also in New York at the Sheraton in Midtown, and we have reporters obviously on the scene there as well, and we will be getting reaction. Early numbers are, and they're very preliminary at this point, Hillary, the margin, while polls said going into today it could be as much as 10 to 12 points, it's expected to possibly be a little bit tighter, but very early at this point. We're going to see how that goes. In fact, why don't we, you want to go live to Trump Tower? We got Cecilia Dowd. Cecilia's on the ground for us already. They got some good news as soon as the polls closed, didn't they, Cecilia?
Yeah, polls just closed. It's getting pretty loud here. There's been some cheering behind me, a lot of excitement. Now, it was just June of last year when Donald Trump announced in this very building, Trump Tower, that he was going to run for president. One journalist tells me that on that day, there were several dozen media outlets. Tonight, it's a very different story. There are several hundred journalists packed into this room behind me. We are awaiting Donald Trump. He should be here shortly. All these journalists here covering the man who many critics thought would never make it this far. Now the slogan for the Trump campaign is "Make America Great Again." Words we've heard time and time again from the presidential hopeful himself, and words that seem to have resonated with many Americans and many New Yorkers, many Trump supporters telling me that as a businessman they think he'd be a good president, he'd be good for the economy. Many others telling me they like that he's straightforward. One supporter at a recent rally I covered told me that he liked that Trump didn't care about offending anybody in what the supporter called our politically correct climate. Now, we are expecting Donald Trump out here shortly. Perhaps a humbling moment this morning after he voted. One reporter asked him what it was like to be in that booth voting for himself, and he looked at the journalist and he said it was a proud and a great moment, and then he paused and he said he was honored. Now again, there's a lot of excitement here in the air at Trump Tower. We are expecting to hear from Trump soon. Reporting live from Manhattan, Cecilia Dowd, FiOS 1 News.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. And you know, Dominic, if you think back 7 months ago, when Trump took the escalator down, Melania in tow, gets there, and listen, we all know there was a lot of scuttlebutt, and we've had some friends who've populated this desk who the wide speculation is he had to pay people to fill that room when he did it. So we laughed at it because it was an unscripted, meandering address talking about Mexican rapists, and we said, we just saw a campaign start and end in one press conference. 7 months later, he's expected to win, going away in New York. If you look at the political calendar with Pennsylvania and some other states he's all favored to win in, the math could be that he could get to the magic number of delegates he needs and even prevent a contested convention. But before we get to that, we've seen a lot of interesting campaigns. We've seen political upsets. I have never in my lifetime, and who knows how the story ends for him, seen a campaign as bizarre as this. And we'll get to exit polling with Andrew, but you have a divided Republican Party. You have a Republican electorate who's believes this has been the worst thing for their party, how the process has gone. You couldn't make this stuff up if you tried.
You sure couldn't, but get used to it, because everything tonight, at least for this New York contest, everything tonight, Richard, is going to come up the Donald. He will carry most of New York's congressional districts, might have a shot at all of them. Kasich may do okay, but of course Ted Cruz, he left New York a long time ago.
Well, let's do the math for everyone. Andrew, first let's start with what's at stake in New York in terms of delegates for Republicans. Then let's get to how they're divvied up, and then obviously the magic number that the Donald is at now and needs to get to avoid what could be a very big family food fight in Cleveland.
Well, there are 95 delegates in play on the Republican side tonight. Of those, 14 go to the state winner. That's already going to be Donald Trump. So Donald Trump has won those 14 delegates already. Then we get into the congressional district. Each of the 27 congressional districts in New York offer 3 delegates available. And there you see the breakdown. So each district gets 3 delegates. If a candidate, let's say Donald Trump, tops 50% of the district, he'll win all 3 of those delegates. If he wins but still comes in under 50%, he'll get 2 delegates, and the second place candidate will get 1 delegate. Now, Trump needs 479 more delegates to win the Republican nomination before he gets to Cleveland. If he's going to stay on pace, or get back on pace rather, to get to that number before he gets to Cleveland, he's going to need to win probably about 60, 62 delegates tonight in order to get there. There's a good chance that he could top 70 delegates tonight. He's already got 14 in the bank. If he wins 22 districts, then he's already up to 58 delegates. He just needs a little bit better showing in a few other districts, which should not be that hard to do. And don't forget, the districts where he doesn't win, all he needs to do is come in second place, and he gets an additional delegate in each one of those districts. It is not unreasonable to think that he'll get 70 plus delegates tonight. If he does that, he jumps from a little behind the pace he needs to get the nomination to a little ahead of the pace that he needs to get the nomination. And again, with very friendly primaries coming up a week from tonight, these so-called Acela primaries from Maryland, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, all of which should be good for Donald Trump. He'll not only have the momentum, he can make a strong case that he'll win this nomination without a fight.
And the optics, Dominic, for folks who pay close attention to this, it's not coincidental. Rudy Giuliani said in the last 48 hours, if he comes close, if he doesn't get the 1287 before he gets there, and he gets close enough to it, he's off by 30 or 40, they should still give it to him. When you see Rupert Murdoch having a lunch with him, Megyn Kelly having a private meeting to bury the hatchet, if you will, when you see Paul Ryan saying that there should be no white knight. Forget about me, Paul Ryan speaking. Nobody should be considered at a convention unless they ran in the race, winnowing down the possibilities yet again. It gives the impression, there's not an inevitability at this point, but it gives the impression that at least some people are saying, we may not like the idea of Donald Trump representing the grand old party out of our convention, but if we're going to be stuck with him, we might as well work out a détente here so that we're not going to be daily, like he has been, having a war of words with the Republican National Committee chairman, right? There seems to be a meeting of the minds that we may be stuck with this guy.
There's no doubt about it, Richard. It is my contention, and I understand all the deliberation that's going back and forth. It's my contention at the end of the day, it's almost going to be impossible to stop him. For all the initiatives that have gone forth today from the RNC, it has been somewhat effective. It has lifted Ted Cruz, but at the end of the day, it is my contention, if I had to give you a guess tonight at this hour of what's going to happen, Trump is going to get the nomination, and it looks like on the first ballot. It goes to the second ballot, all bets are off, and things could change. But it looks like he's the nominee.
And there's a lot of interesting things at play. Obviously, the two huge races that we're watching are on the Republican side. We're already there is a winner, which is Donald Trump. Obviously, we're still awaiting the math in terms of how many districts he's won, the delegate breakout, as Andrew explained. And then obviously on the Democratic side, a much closer race expected this evening. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Hillary Clinton still in New York. In fact, she's at the Sheraton, and our own Natalie Patterson is live there at Clinton headquarters. Natalie, can you hear me?
Hi guys, yes, it's definitely a party atmosphere here inside the Sheraton, New York in Times Square. Everybody eagerly awaiting the arrival of Hillary Clinton. This room is packed at this point. Press on this side of the room and supporters, as you can see behind me. You know, one thing that's interesting to point out, Bernie Sanders, you know, he is really the candidate in this race that claims the most young voters in these primaries. However, you look around this room and look at all the young people packed into this room. The young people are among the first here, and there are a lot of the folks that we've seen out today, you know, holding the signs in support of Hillary, trying to gather people up and get them to the polls. We've been talking to plenty of people all day who say that Clinton is the most qualified candidate. She is a champion of human rights, women's rights also. Voters tell us they supported her when she ran for Senate and during her previous run for the White House, of course. Now, we're also hearing that Governor Mark Cuomo will be in attendance this evening. We're unclear on whether he'll be speaking here tonight or just in the crowd to support Clinton, but definitely a party atmosphere, lots of energy, people very positive, expecting a wide margin, of course, to benefit Hillary Clinton tonight. So we'll see if she has that wide margin that polls had been indicating in the weeks leading up to tonight's primary. That's the latest from the Sheraton in Times Square. Natalie Patterson, Bios 1 News.
All right, Natalie, we'll be checking back with you in a little bit here. Andrew, you're getting some ideas as it relates on the Democratic side.
Yeah, you always look for canary in the coal mine districts where one candidate should do better than another candidate, or in this case, the 6th district, which is Grace Meng's district in Queens. That should be a strong district for Bernie Sanders. Very early in the counting so far, but it's 60-40 Hillary in that district at this point. Again, it's not going to finish at that point, but even the fact that early results from that district are coming in that lopsided in a way that we're not or weren't expecting, I think that portends, in addition to all the stuff that we're seeing from exit polls earlier tonight.
And get into a few of the exit poll numbers that surprised some folks, including enthusiasm as it relates to a candidate, et cetera.
Well, on the Democratic side, one of the first exit polls that I saw
and explain
was,
to people how exit polls work, Andrew, if they're not familiar.
As people are coming out of the polling booth, and this may have happened to you at various points while you've been going to vote, you come out of the polling booth and there's some guy with a clipboard or some young person with a clipboard ask you a few questions, what your party registration is, who you voted for, and then ask you a series of issue-related questions. That's compiled throughout the course of the day, and it's funneled through and it's analyzed by various news sources, and then it all comes out in exit polls, which not only give us an idea, that's how we're able to project that Donald Trump wins the New York primary based on exit polls and how people voted, but also on key issues, particularly in races like the Democratic side where we haven't projected a winner at this point. So one of the first ones that we saw today was from Democratic voters, what do you want to see from the next president of the United States? Do you want a president who will continue President Obama's policies, will be more liberal than President Obama, or will be less liberal, okay? And obviously, if you want a more liberal president, that's a Bernie Sanders voter. If you want a less liberal or continue the policies, that's probably a Hillary Clinton voter. 48% say they want to continue President Obama's policies. 10% say they want a president who's less liberal. And this is just Democratic voters. So that's 58%, giving you an indication that they are probably likely to support Hillary Clinton.
And we also saw gun votes in terms of how people felt about guns, more aligned certainly with Hillary Clinton and a few others as well. As a point of reference, everyone, in addition to following the two presidential party races going on right now on primary night in New York, also special election in Long Island, people with a close eye on. We're going to be following that one as well. That's to replace Dean Skelos, also Shelley Silver's seat up in New York City as well. We're going to have all that. But as we go to break here, let's take a live look into Trump headquarters. We're expected to hear from the Donald himself shortly. We'll have that and much more as primary night coverage continues right here.